I'd like to introduce to you Dr. Larry Ward. And Dr. Ward you're a biology professor,
Anatomy and physiology.
anatomy and physiology professor, and you're also a chiropractor.
Correct.
And so you've been dealing with anatomy and physiology, both with your patients and then from an academic perspective for a number of years.
Indeed. About 7 years for teaching and 15 for structural alignment stuff.
Sure. Well, that's awesome. And I know that the students who you work with actually love having you for a professor. I've heard a lot of good feedback about your classes. And
depends on how well they're doing with grade-wise, whether they say that or not.
But they like you a lot.
Yes.
And that's because you actually care about the students you work with. So what I want to do is just spend some time talking with you a little bit about, how do you as a professor prepare your students for academic success? Really, how do students present in the classroom? What are their needs? I know you have a word for it. You call it student stress syndrome.
Yes.
And this is sort of the observation you've made, but you've come up with some pretty creative ways to address it. But how do students how do they prepare for exams and for their academic studies?
Well, Richard, you and I both have undergone this, and in our own mess and criteria of all the hours we've taken, they don't. At the last minute we cram. At the last minute you slam coffee and you're throwing on clothes going, oh crap, and heading out the door, and you're sitting there trying to know what's going on.
Right.
But the body is completely rebelling because we haven't really prepared. We haven't really given it the opportunity for success.
Sure. Now, there are some ways that we can prepare the body for success.
Indeed.
Obviously, clinical hypnosis is a strategy that can help a person to create a sense of calm from within and deal with the physical aspects. But what are some other ways that you recommend to your students for preparing for exams from a physical perspective?
All of the basics that we forget. Eating is so important. Instead of cramming some fast food down along the way, actually preparing and taking time to let the body digest the food, because it's not so much what we eat as it is what we don't digest or what we don't properly are able to assimilate. So eating is important. Sleeping is important. Gosh, we cram 2 or 3 hours of sleep. We cram the night before. I see students just melting down because they're not well rested. Drinking water. If I can get my patients and I can get my students to drink water instead of sucking down monstrous, bullish drinks.
Right.
That makes all the difference in the world, and the way the body is able to physiologically process as well.
Sure. So when you see students who come into your college class and they have a monstrous, bullish drink in front of them, that doesn't make you happy as a professor?
No. And that's one of the things, the contention that I have with some of my students. We laugh and joke, and it's not that I'm berating them, but I'm bringing to their attention, what are you doing to yourself? So
Sure.
We might spend 2 or 3 minutes talking about, okay, what did we see out in the classroom today? 32-ounce soda, a bullish drink, a monstrous drink. How you doing? How's that working for you? So,
Right. But students really, I think they have the belief that this is going to be helpful to them.
yes. Well, it's the hype.
That's the hype. That's the marketing.
Indeed.
Yeah. And the alternatives, of course, it's amazing how many people call me up and they actually say, I thought I would call the hypnosis center because I'm having a hard time sleeping. Can hypnosis be helpful with sleep? And of course, hypnosis is the Greek hypnos, the Greek word for sleep, hypnos, the Greek god of sleep. Learning hypnosis is a great way to help a person to simply take care of that basic need for improved sleep before
Indeed.
an exam.
Instead of Mothra flying across the TV screen saying that's going to produce sleep.
Right,
Yeah.
exactly. In fact, one of the ways to get energy for an exam or for a particularly grueling academic schedule is to actually get sleep before that grueling schedule. Let the body energize itself.
Indeed.
Now, you've talked about something that I think is really important for us to be aware of, and that is the drinks that people take, the monstrous, bullish drink. You've done a great way of phrasing that. I like that. None of us will get sued. But what you've done is you've brought up an interesting area in that students don't methylate correctly.
Correct.
Can you explain that in sort of layman's terms? Because those who are participating in this webinar, of course, we're professional hypnotists rather than chiropractors or other healthcare professionals, but this is something really important, and it's almost the converse of using those energy drinks.
Yes, and part of it's because of that grasping for something, because they know there's this emptiness. How do I make my body work with what I know I need to do and accomplish, instead of the opposite of recognizing the body's needs to overcome? So in those cases, we find so many times that the students, the patients and stuff, have improper ways of methylating B vitamins. Fancy words for saying our body uses B vitamins necessarily for neurological processes. But if it's not processing right, it's going down this pathway instead of that. Dr. Kendall Stewart is an MD in Texas, and he's done phenomenal research. And following on his footsteps, we find the ability to correct and send the body down the right methylation pathway, to get the body to use the good stuff that you're putting in it. Because you may be getting liquid gold, but you may not be assimilating it, may not be using it. So Dr. Stewart came up with these programs of utilizing nutritional supplements for helping correct that methylation stuff. We correlate that with Andrew Keach's studies on colostrum. Fancy words for saying that which can change the body's neuroimmune system.
Okay. And, I think proper nutrition is really important in a lot of students for a couple of different reasons. One is financial. They're broke, so they eat the cheap food. They get the big pizza and have it delivered and save it for tomorrow's breakfast.
Sitting there with a $5 can
with a $5 can of Red Bull,
coffee,
of course,
or,
right?
Yeah.
So but we see that. So one could be financial. Two is simply a lack of knowledge. We live in an instant drive-through world, and so what you're saying is that, of course we know that students should eat nothing but whole foods, if it, however the phrase goes, if it isn't grown, peeled, eaten, or whatever else, we shouldn't eat it. But that's not really where your students are at.
No,
they're not realistic. They're not going to be cooking their own food and those sorts of things. So to meet their basic nutritional needs, you found that using supplements actually does have a beneficial effect in their academic performance.
Without question. They can utilize to top off the tank, per se, to give more nutrients to what they may already be doing, or in spite of what they're doing.
Sure. Now, because I'm neither a physician nor a nutritionist, I don't sell supplements to my clients who come to see me here in the office. But one of the things that I've done is I've used some of the resources on your website. You have a website called
brainup.tv.
brainup.tv. I couldn't remember if it was .com or not, so that's why I'll let you fill up brainup.tv.com. And there's lots of great resources on there, along with some recommendations that could actually be useful for students as well.
We're developing a new program. It's right in the interim right now. In fact, I don't believe the website is functioning yet, but it's braingain.com, BRANEGANE.com, and on that, students will be able to assess their own learning skills, whether they're visual, auditory, or tactile, and utilizing that information on how to better develop study skills to give them success. That also refers to the brainup.tv for helping nutritional stuff.
And I just found a tremendous amount of resources that you've put out there on the web, and it's great that those are available to educate folks. And you and I are on the same wavelength. As a hypnotist, one of the very first things I do is I try to figure out my new client who's come in my office, are they an auditory learner? Are they a kinesthetic learner? Are they a visual learner? And I try to match my inductions and my hypnotic suggestions, at least in the first couple of sessions, because I want to build rapport with them, to their primary learning style.
Right.
Because as a hypnotist, I view myself as a teacher. I'm teaching skills to a person. So you find that in your work as a professor, knowing if a student is an auditory, a visual, or a kinesthetic learner is also essential for success.
Indeed. Well, we can preach till nighttime to a student to take notes, but if they're an auditory learner, it doesn't matter how many notes they're going to take. Well, they can record the sessions versus a kinesthetic. They're going to better take notes. A visual is going to make note cards.
Note cards or graphs or those sorts of things, exactly. And so you found that by using some of those same resources that I use as a hypnotist, you enhance your success as a professor. Now, most of the people who are participating in this webinar have probably taken some of my other webinars. Mm-hmm. If this is your first time taking one of my webinars, at my website, subliminalscience.com, you can actually download the Nongard Assessment of Primary Representational Systems. It's free. There's a section called Free Resources, and it's a one-page quiz that you can give your clients that'll actually help you to understand their primary learning style. I know that you have a very similar type of quiz that you have on your BrainUp.TV website.
It's the BrainGain.com.
It's the BrainGain.com.
And it'll be
website.
up next week.
Okay, great. Because that's a tremendous resource as well. In fact, I'm going to actually ask my webmaster, just to make this simple, to put a link to your website right underneath this video. And I'm also going to put a link so that you can download that PDF, which is the Nongard Assessment of Primary Representational Systems, which does that. Now, you have an acronym that you use with your students called Be Prepared. And if you would touch on this, because I think students really enhance their learning with acronyms. Mm-hmm. Maybe it's just the way I learn, but people love acronyms. You know, I'm a big proponent of acceptance and commitment therapy, ACT therapy. I tend to like acronyms, and your acronym of Be Prepared is really a great acronym for those of us who work with students in knowing what we should be doing to help them be successful. So why don't you touch on each of those elements of the Be Prepared acronym?
Okay. Well, I just want to say I share with you that acronym. I love acronyms, and it's primarily because of a mentor of mine, Dr. James Parker, and he has since passed, but he was, Larry, if you got FCBs in your PSI, you'll be successful, and that's faith, confidence, and belief in your products, services, and ideas. So I would like to take credit for thinking of acronyms, but I have to actually give that to James Parker. But Be Prepared, I developed to do talks at student unions to help students kind of change some stinking thinking. Be prepared means to be passionate, using the word prepared for the acronym, passionate, helping support them in supportive ways, and but yet not going over to the extreme. Do you remember Howard Dean and the yell? You know, so we have to tone our passion a bit, but be passionate in accomplishing goals, to be responsible. I'm standing there at the podium, and half the time students are coming in late. I even give butt points, and I can't get them in my classroom on time sometimes. But coming in late, having a test and not having a pencil, not having a Scantron, all the things. Be responsible, because it allows you to be responsible. Being extraordinary. Don't just settle for ordinary. Don't just put forth ordinary efforts. Be extraordinary in your efforts. Go above and beyond. Be understanding that's going to help you accomplish your goal better, more efficiently. Being patient with yourself. How many times do we get so impatient that we get frustrated and we shut down our learning processes? I've sent you patients just specifically for that, to get out of that anxiety from their impatience with themselves, and being patient with our spouses, being patient with our kids, being patient with our parents as a student, because they're not going the path you're going, and sometimes there's resentments built from that holding back aspect of that. We have to be patient with the significant others in our lives as well. In addition to that, assessment, being able to determine your learning technique, assess the proper visual, auditory, or kinesthetic aspects in that preparation. Be real. Don't be phony. Abraham Lincoln said, you have to grow your own height no matter how tall your grandfather was. We can't learn somebody else's learning style or technique, but we can use that to enhance our own. So we have to be real in knowing our flaws as well as our positive attitudes and aspects. Eat, for the E of the word prepared. Eat, sleep, breathe. I'd like to, again, take credit for Andrew Weil's breathing assessment, but he was on Dr. Oz, so it's
right.
We've known him for years. But 4-7-8, he teaches how to breathe 4-7-8, breathing in and holding for a count of 4, holding it for a count of 7, breathing out for a count of 8. That's relaxing the diaphragm. That's helping re-energize our body's ability in oxygenation. So eating is important, breathing is important, and sleep, as we talked about before. And the last is D, be a dreamer. Don't settle for complacency. Don't settle for less than what you're capable of doing. And I always think of Will Smith in that movie that he did when he became a stockbroker.
Right.
And he's telling his son, don't let anybody hold you back. Don't let anybody make your dreams less than what they are, including me. So be a dreamer. It's okay. So prepared gives me the ability to share with students how to maintain that balance. You know, balance is that thing we see as we swing this way and we sing that way, and we're trying to hit that center mark, that homeostasis of our body, that balance. We can, when we rock in that balance, we're prepared, we're able to overcome.
So one of the things that sounds like I could really do as a hypnotist is I could take your Be Prepared acronym, I could make a poster on my wall, put by Dr. Larry Ward on the bottom, or I could even just write it out on my desk. I could actually use that as the structure for the values that I was trying to instill and teach during the course of my hypnosis session. And the result would be success in academic performance. And that's a great foundation. What is it that you should be doing as a hypnotist during the course of your sessions with your client, helping them to be prepared? Incorporating each of those steps of Larry's acronym would probably go a long way at resolving most of the academic issues that our clients experience. And that's certainly something that I'm going to begin doing. Now, we know that a lot of the students come to us because they sit in class, they hear you speak, they study the anatomy or the physiology textbooks, they read the material, but then they get to the exam and they feel like, I can't recall it. What's a strategy or a technique to help people increase their ability to recall something during the pressure of an exam?
There are all types of different techniques out there. I recall one years ago I learned in being able to visually imagine or have visual imagery of placing that text or placing that subject of what you're trying to learn, attaching it to something that you're able to remember. This was utilizing 20 different things. Like one would be a tree trunk, and placing that, what you're trying to memorize, in the branches of that trunk, seeing that tree, knowing the type of bark, knowing the type of leaf, knowing which branch, whatever you're setting, that anatomical component or whatever that you're learning, setting it on that branch specifically. Two, think of a ping pong table, ping pong, setting something on that ping pong table. So when you're trying to remember, you remember two and you see it sitting on that table, etc.
And so creating associations with the learnings, with things that we're already familiar with, really brings the unknown past the critical factor of the mind and into our subconscious reservoir of memory in an easily accessible place
to be able to draw from.
And that's a hypnotic process that I'm going to actually be teaching during week 2 of this webinar series. Larry, you've been really helpful today. I want to thank you for your time. Sitting back here, by the way, are some things that you brought with us. These are some of the products from BrainUp.tv.
Mm-hmm.
Just real quick, we know people can go to brainuptv.com or your other website, which is
braingain.com or brainup.tv.
Right, and find out some additional information and get some additional resources for students. But these items are some of those supplements that you actually talked about that you use with folks.
Using these, for example, in combination, dopamine level is so important, as you know, as we see serotonin imbalances, norepinephrine imbalances, and dopamine imbalances, and that incorporates 80% of the issues. If we can get the methylation cycle going down the right pathway and get the dopamine levels up, then our body is able to operate at a functional level. These help bring that back and regain that methylation improper balance. These were the ones developed ADD, all these different inflammatory disease processes to help support those. The Brain Up Harmony, for example, is good for somebody who's just feels like they're trying to fight their way out of that paper bag in their learning process. This has 5-hydroxytryptophan and B6 in different combinations to help balance that system. This is Brain Up Balance, and this is the one to help basics of bringing back reminiscent aspects and memory function. So for heavy-duty memory issues, we go to these. For help with memory issues, we go to this. And to help keep a positive attitude along the way, we go with that one.
And so, and what I really want to point out about these things is that that these are really the alternatives to the carbonated, monstrous, bullish beverages. When students are buying those $5 energy drinks, they're trying to accomplish the same thing that they could accomplish with proper nutrition and the essential building blocks of a healthy mental structure. This is the alternative to those, correct?
We would like to think that the other is the alternative to this.
Right, exactly.
Because we want to positively support them in that,
Sure.
and that's what we try to concentrate on.
Well, Larry, I appreciate your time, and
bet.
thank you very much today, and I'm sure that everybody who's viewing
Happy to do so.
can benefit as well, especially from that acronym, Be Prepared. Thanks.
You bet.